Well, let's talk about it. UFC Brooklyn. It is the first fight on the ESPN networks. We'll have a live post show immediately afterwards. We will talk about this show next week, but this is a hell of a card. We're going to give you the betting odds, our thoughts, and then at the end, I'll give you my I got 5 on it. Let's start off with the flyweight championship fight. Henry Cejudo, TJ Dillashaw. Joe Dillashaw has never fought at flyweight that I'm aware of. Cejudo has had issues making weight. I mean, we just talked about that. Cejudo is a plus 175. Dillashaw a minus 210. How do you see this one going?
It's a tough scrap to break down because TJ Dillashaw's striking is usually, it's fantastic. The way he comes in and out and throws his strikes and sets up his combos. It may be too difficult for Henry Cejudo to deal with, but at the same time, the weight cut could impact his performance should this fight go more than 3 rounds, right? So it's very difficult to say. And then again, Henry Cejudo beat Mighty Mouse Johnson. Close, but he beat him. And Mighty Mouse Johnson was arguably the greatest pound-for-pound fighter we have, and the perfect mixed martial artist. So this is a fantastic fight. It's very difficult to say, and like you said, when you look at the odds and who should you put 5 on it or not, it's a very difficult one to look at. With Dillashaw being the underdog, I'll put 5 on that, no problem.
I think we got to look at what effect that TJ Dillashaw is going to have from losing all this weight. I mean, somebody pointed it out in the live chat right now. He doesn't have a neck right now. That is very un-Dillashaw-like. And while this fight isn't at bantamweight, James, against bantamweights, Cejudo is very, very successful, although none to the level of a TJ Dillashaw. Will Dillashaw be able to stop Cejudo's wrestling? Because we saw his hands improve to a scary, like the leap between his, I want to say the Demetrius Johnson fight and the Joseph Benavidez fight was amazing for a few months. From April to December 2016, his striking game improved a lot, and it's only gotten better. However, when you talk about that, you're talking about the angles and the footwork of TJ Dillashaw that has frustrated some of the best in the world at that.
It's very interesting. I think the weight cut is really the biggest thing here, because if we're looking at a healthy TJ Dillashaw, the Dillashaw we saw, knock out Cody Garbrandt and everyone else, I think that TJ wins every day. I mean, there are levels to this, and I think TJ might be one of the best strikers in the UFC. Let's just forget about bantamweight, whatever. I think technically he's one of the best strikers there. So you just put that into frame. But here's the thing that kind of worries me a little bit about Dillashaw, aside from the cut, which, I get people being concerned, but I mean, it seems like he's tracking this. I saw the whole post on Instagram where he's doing it on a computer and there's all this science. But Brett Okamoto tried to tweet it out yesterday. I have no clue about it. I didn't do very well in math in high school, so I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I think, if he's able to, go in there and look good. The only thing is, though, like Dillashaw's been hit a little bit in his career, right? If you look at even the Henan Brow fight, you look at, obviously, Garbrandt knocked him down and then it just, was saved by the bell. Your chin doesn't get any better when you cut extra weight, right? So he might be more susceptible. Now, I know Cejudo only has, I think, 1 knockout win, the one over Wilson Hayes, but that's a concern to me. Like, if it stays standing, Dillashaw might be like, you know what, I'm the better striker, I'll go for it. But it's possible because of the extra weight he's cutting, he could be more susceptible for a knockout. So that worries me. But if we're looking at this on paper, I mean, Dillashaw has to be, he is the favorite. I see people saying, oh, everyone's counting out Cejudo. Well, they're not. It's just that Dillashaw's looked so good in his run. And Cejudo, I don't think he beat Demetrius Johnson. And I want to say one quick thing about that too, which is that, I think when in Johnson's shoes, I'm not saying I think to a certain degree he did overlook Cejudo in the rematch, because think of it this way. You win the first fight by impressive fashion, a knockout. Like, that first fight couldn't have gone any better for DJ. You've got the rematch. You've defended your title I don't know how many times. Like, all the greats lose. All the greats, Fedor, Anderson Silva, they all get to a certain point where no matter how focused you want to be, you do sort of let things slip away a little bit. And DJ, I thought, let things slip away a little bit, but it still went to a decision. I still thought he won the fight. So, I mean, it's not like Henry went out there and, completely dominated DJ. It was a close fight and he beat him. A win's a win. We'll say that he won the fight, but Dillashaw, other than one loss recently to Cruz, which I think could have gone his way, I think Dillashaw is rightfully the favorite in this fight.
I am, for one, sick of the bantamweight carousel. They got to get that division up and going and continuing. It's been Dillashaw, Cruz, Garbrandt, Faber nonstop for years. They've got to get off that treadmill and get some new blood going. You could have given that title shot to Cejudo and closed down the flyweight division, which they clearly want to do. They clearly want to do it. or you could have given it to Marlon Moraes, and nobody would have batted an eye.
Wait, Sean, they clearly want to close a division, but didn't Benavidez sign strictly for flyweight fights?
He signed to be the replacement in this fight.
Or wasn't it a 4-fight deal all at 125?
Yeah, I don't buy anything. You think the UFC doesn't have a way out of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make sure. It's just when I saw that news, I'm like, what? Huh?
It's weird, man. It's weird, man. Greg Hardy fighting Alan Crowder. Alan Crowder, you all probably know, nobody probably knows a lot about him, but he is a plus 405. Spoiler alert, he's going to be one of my I got 5 on it's later. Greg Hardy, a minus 510. What can you say? Greg Hardy's going to go in there. He's going to throw his hands. He's going to hope that that hand connects on Alan Crowder's jaw, and probably vice versa. It's a heavyweight fight, and a heavyweight fight featuring a very, very inexperienced Greg Hardy, who does have a special level of athleticism, James. And I had somebody say, well, he's getting into UFC and he's 30 already. That doesn't matter at heavyweight. That does not matter at heavyweight. You had Dan Lambert saying, yeah, Bobby Lashley could beat some of these guys. Bobby's 42, 43 at this stage. How do you think this one goes, James?
Well, I think the thing you talked about off the top about the betting odds, I agree. No way you could put any money on this. You could put 5 on Crowder just because it is heavyweight MMA. But let's talk about Alan Crowder's last fight. I was at that one. That was in Detroit, UFC 218. Justin Willis knocked him out in the first round. Justin Willis is not known as a knockout guy. This guy went to a decision with Chase Sherman not that long ago, and you know, we had a decision against Mark Hunt. Like that loss looks even worse now. And then you've got the layoff, and then you got the fact that he's not training at Hard Knocks for this camp. I mean, Hardy, let's take everything we know about Greg Hardy outside of the cage out of this equation here, and you watch his fights. He looks impressive. I mean, he moves very fast for heavyweight. And there's something about him that's a little bit, you know, and that might explain some of the past issues that he's had, that there's like a bit of a killer instinct in there too, that I haven't seen. And add in the fact he's at American Top Team, he's getting really quality, you know, the guy's getting to work with, you know, all types of top heavyweight fighters. I think, you know, the line is certainly justified. I wouldn't bet on it because it's heavyweight, because, you know, anything can happen. But I think Greg Hardy's going to shine here. And I think in the co-main event, I think, you know, people talk about pressure. This guy's fought in the NFL. People wanted him out. I think every situation, you notice, you know, he hasn't been doing any interviews or anything like that, because I think they know people are going to ask him about that stuff. This guy's lasered in, and he's got to win this fight, and I think he will. I think he gets a knockout.
Joe, does the experience factor matter at all in this, considering the level of heavyweight we're seeing? Crowder has fought pro and amateur for, I think, over 7 years. Greg Hardy, about 14 months. This is Greg Hardy's 7th fight total, amateur and pro. I think it's Crowder's 20th. He's been in there with Curtis Blades and made it to the 2nd round, albeit that was several years ago. Will that play any role, or will it just be whoever's closed fist connects to the chin first?
Well, I'm going to go with B. I mean, A, it should make a difference. If you're an intelligent fighter, you're a cerebral fighter, you got to look at the situation and say to yourself, okay, you know what? Greg Hardy, now, James says he's impressed. I haven't been overly impressed. What I do like about Hardy is that he is a fighter. Okay, he's trending now to becoming a mixed martial artist. Right, he's getting there. He's you know, when you're at ATT, you have no choice but to get better. Under the assumption that he's training on a regular basis at ATT and not doing, you know, with some of the guys, you know, I'm with this camp, but guy shows up twice a week. Right. So Greg Hardy, in my opinion, is a fighter, meaning referee or not, you want to get into a scrap with me? Let's go. I don't care, and I'm going to keep going, and you know, until one of us goes down. That's what Greg Hardy has in him. Now, you take those skills and you hone them, you make him into a mixed martial artist. That's a very dangerous combination, right? That's where the elite fighters become, you know, great mixed martial artists. Crowder should use his experience and be smart enough not to engage overly too much with Hardy, because if that fist does land, you're going to sleep. Let's carry this guy. Let's give him enough for him to work and carry him to the 2nd or 3rd round, and then I'm going to switch gears, and then I'll go in for the finish if you can do it. Not saying Crowder can do that, but at the same time, experience should play a factor here. Will it? I don't think so. Greg Hardy's just going to go in there. He knows all the eyes are going to be on him in this co-main event, and he's going to go in there and do what he always does, go in and try and get that finish.
This show's propped up by one hell of an undercard. You have Gregor Gillespie against Yancy Medeiros. Yancy Medeiros won 3 of his last 4 fights. Gregor Gillespie is 5-0 in the UFC. When you look at that line, Gregor Gillespie is a massive favorite at minus 510. Yancy Medeiros is a plus 405. Then on the other end of the spectrum, if you're going from name value, I think a lot of people from the outside looking in would expect this Glover Teixeira Carl Roberson line to be much different than it is. Roberson a plus 110, Glover Teixeira a minus 130. Joe, who are you picking in each of these fights, and do these lines surprise you?
The line with Medeiros and Gillespie does surprise me. I think a lot of the lines. Sorry, whoa, let's rip the headphones out of my ears here. A lot of these lines here, guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, but many of them are sort of overinflated. You get a lot of fans in general that, it's like, if I can make the comparison to soccer, for example, Manchester United plays or something like that, the line gets overinflated because it's such a massive fan base. You've got to subtract some of that and make it more equal. So you look at some of this stuff here, and I don't believe Yancy Medeiros should be an underdog that much. Maybe in the low 200s, maybe. So I'm giving him some credit in this fight here. I know Gillespie's fantastic, but Medeiros has been lighting it up despite even in his last scrap, which was just insane, right? So it's. Gillespie should win this fight, yes. But God, I'd like to see Medeiros light up Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii goes crazy when this guy fights. And of course, Glover Teixeira and Carl Robertson, I think that line is actually incorrect. I think Robertson wins this fight.
Robertson is, including Dana White's Contender Series in UFC, he is 3-1 in the company, James. He does have experience at light heavyweight. He's fought there before. How do you think these two fights go?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually going the other way. I think Glover Teixeira beats Robertson, mainly just because of experience. Robertson's only got 8 fights. He's moving up a weight class. We should mention he was at middleweight, and now he's moving up to 205 on short notice. Interestingly enough, Robertson is a teammate of Corey Anderson, who's the last guy to defeat Glover. So, maybe some insight there. Obviously, it's sort of what it comes down to is this. I mean, Glover is clearly not the same fighter he was. He's 39 years old. He hasn't fought since July of last year, so it has been a bit of a layoff here. But I just think there is a clear advantage here. If Glover wants to take this to the ground, we see Robertson's only loss was by submission, and I think Glover could very well do that as well. So, I think experience will pay in this fight, and I think Glover will surprise some people, and I think the line's right where it needs to be just because of the experience factor. The Gregor Gillespie fight's interesting to me for a couple of reasons. First off, I think if you look, Gregor is absolutely a talent, but we don't know too much about him because if you look at the guys he's fought, Vince Pichel, Jordan Rinaldi, Jason Gonzalez, Andrew Holbrook, those aren't really like household names. They're not names where you say like, wow, that was a really good win. Like he's beat all of them. He's finished them. But, I think Yancy is probably the most notable guy he's fought so far. And Yancy dropping, I mean, a lot of people are worried about the weight cut. I interviewed Yancy. He was 164 pounds when I interviewed him 2 weeks ago. So he's obviously, and he's cut out meat completely. He's on a plant-based diet now. I guess taken after his buddies, the Diaz brothers, just going completely plant. Even mentioned he might go to 45 after this, depending on how the cut goes, which is crazy when you think he fought at middleweight at one point. So, I don't think the weight cut will be an issue. But here's a prop I wanted to bring up to you guys. Medeiros wins by TKO or KO is plus 675.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. So I might lay that because I think here's the thing. A lot of people are like, Gillespie's going to smoke him. I don't know, man. Medeiros is Hawaiian. Those guys don't go down easily. I would never count out a Hawaiian in a fight. So I think Gillespie will win. But if there's value in this fight, it's definitely on Medeiros because I think a lot of people are overlooking him. And he didn't even really need to go down to 55 because he only had one loss to Cerrone. We forget that it was just December of 2017. He got that win over Cowboy Oliveira, which is a great win in that division. So I'll go Gillespie, but the value's on Medeiros. And then what was the other ones? I think, I don't know if we talked about it, but I got Benavidez over Ortiz, and I got Paige Van Zandt over Ostovich as well.
Yeah, I've got Benavidez over Ortiz as well. Benavidez at minus 235, Dustin Ortiz a plus 195. Then you have Paige Van Zandt, a 155 underdog over Rachel Ostovich, plus 135. Your quick picks for those. Joe, the men's division is just trying to stay alive. Joseph Benavidez is there probably just trying to make weight in case somebody doesn't in the main event.
Yeah, I think Benavidez wins this fight. Hands down. I think it'll be a good scrap. Dustin Ortiz does bring the action, but I think Benavidez, hopefully he keeps his mind straight and realizes, you got to focus on Ortiz as much as it sucks that you may go into this title fight. But I think he emerges victorious, and I think Paige Van Zandt defeats Rachel Ostovich.
We also have a couple of really high-level prelim fights I want to talk about. Donald Cerrone against Alex Hernandez. Cerrone a plus 165, Hernandez a minus 190. I think that's a dangerous line in some degrees when you talk about Alex Hernandez and the buzz that he's gotten coming into the UFC. I'm picking Cerrone to win this fight, James, but how do you feel about this one?
I feel like when a fighter gets up in age, which Cerrone is, and you're going back down to a weight class like 155, I think that's bad news. I think, I don't know why he's deciding to do this at this point. Maybe he feels like he's undersized. Like he's just coming off a win over Mike Perry at welterweight. You think that he would want to stick in that division. He's fighting a guy in Alexander Hernandez. I mean, we talked, earlier about, Dillashaw in the cut and, his chin. Cerrone's chin could be susceptible here too with the cutting those extra pounds. I don't think he cuts a ton of weight, but that still can't help. And Hernandez has knockout power. This is a huge fight. I'm picking Hernandez here. I just think the youth, the speed, the knockout power he has, as long as he can avoid the ground, I think this is Hernandez's fight because I think he'll outstrike him. Now, he does have to watch out for those leg kicks, but I think in general, Hernandez's speed will be too much for Cerrone.
Joe, any thoughts on this one?
Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Don't text me. Don't call me. Don't email me. Don't bother me. Let me enjoy it.
You also have Joanne Calderwood and Ariane Lipsky, I think the world of, and she is definitely a great prospect for the UFC, but this is her debut fight in the company. I was surprised that the line was minus 210 for her, plus 175 for Calderwood. I think Calderwood has the potential to be a top name in this division. I'm actually picking her to win, Joe. How do you think it ends up?
It's tough to say with Calderwood, right? I mean, I think people are they've given her as much love as possible. It just hasn't happened. It hasn't, turned over as much as many people would like to have happened. Although she does, she did emerge victorious via submission in her last fight, but that was in August. So it's tough to say. You know me, my heart's always going to be with Calderwood, best voice in MMA. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. James, any thoughts on this one?
Well, I like Lipsky in this fight, but it's funny you guys say that because I actually disagree a little bit. Calderwood, I think she's just been in the wrong weight class.
She doesn't have the best voice in MMA.
What's that?
I said you disagree. She doesn't have the best voice.
Oh yeah. But you look at her losses. I mean, those are top fighters. Cynthia Calvillo, Jessica Andrade, who's now fighting for the title. I mean, those aren't bad losses for her. And she had that. She still has that win over Letourneau at flyweight as well. I think this is the right weight class for her. She's switched camps. She's at Syndicate now. She's actually, I think, dating the head coach, John Wood there. So, I mean, obviously she's getting some good training there with female training partners. That's one of the things I know she's had for this camp. Sarah Kaufman's been down there. There's been a couple fighters that she's gotten to work with. So I think this fight will be closer than people think, but Lipsky's a killer. If you ever watched her fights in KSW, she is a straight up savage, and I'm expecting her to win. I think that's why the line is where it is. But I think Calderwood will do better than people are thinking.
You have some veterans that are underdogs here as we round out this show. Dennis Bermudez, a plus 115 as he faces T. Edwards, who is minus 135. You have Bilal Muhammad, plus 155. Jeff Neal's a minus 175 against him. Then you have Chance Rencounter, who is a plus 165 against his 74th opponent on this show, Kyle Stewart, a minus 215. Corey Sandhagen, who James spoke to ahead of his replacement and spoke to Mario Batista as well. Batista is a plus 385. Sandhagen is a minus 485. Then you have Alonzo Minfield, minus 260. Vinicius Morea is plus 220. James, which of these fights stand out to you, and which of these fights you most looking forward to?
There's a lot of really good fights here. I really like the I'm sort of intrigued by the Dennis Bermudez and T. Edwards fight, just because Edwards had such a disappointing debut, and you've got Bermudez, who he's lost a lot of split decisions though, not like he's been knocked out in all these fights, and he's moving up to 155. As far as I'll put 5 in it. I'll put 5 on Bermudez. He's got way more experience than T. Edwards. He's, again, those losses he had at featherweight, they were close. I think there's definitely some value there. I think fight of the night, hands down, has got to be Bilal Muhammad and Jeff Neal. I am a big Jeff Neal fan. What he has done in that entire team this past year at Fortis has been unstoppable. Bilal Muhammad, always game, always putting on good wins, but I think Neal's knockout power is going to be the difference. And he's a young guy too. I think he's only like 26. So that's he's definitely a dangerous guy in the division. And then what else? Sandhagen and Batista. I think if you see the interview that we did with Batista here on Fightful, the exclusive I got yesterday, he didn't even expect to get a UFC call. And I think Sandhagen, he's a tough guy to finish. Look at Yuri Alcantara. He thought he had him down and out, and Sandhagen gets one of the best comeback wins in UFC history, gets that finish over Alcantara in his last fight. I got to favor Sandhagen there. I like Bermudez, and I like Jeff Neal. And then opening it up, I actually like Kyle Stewart over a chance for encounter. The only thing is, and again, check out the exclusive we did yesterday on Fightful with Kyle Stewart. He says he's got to cut 30 pounds. Now, I asked him this in the interview, and he was kind of like, oh, yeah, it won't be a problem. But I don't think he understands. Like, this is the New York Commission. They almost didn't let Pearl Gonzalez fight because of her breast implants. They didn't let Jessica Aguilar fight because she had chapped lips. If Kyle Stewart's 30 pounds overweight when he gets to New York, I have a feeling this fight might get scrapped. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but I have my concerns that if you remember, they wouldn't let Jesse Ronson fight in Toronto because of his, him cutting too much weight. I could see New York, because they're so strict, going that way as well. I hope it happens. And if it does, I'm favoring Kyle Stewart. He's just, he's incredible. 11-1 record. Only loss actually to James Nakashima, who I referenced earlier. They're actually training partners now at the lab, which is interesting. So yeah, I'll pick Kyle Stewart in that fight, but hopefully there's no issues with the commission.
Joe, as we wrap up this preview, you've covered Dennis Bermudez for quite a long time. He's lost 4 in a row. He is 2-6 in his last 8. If he loses here, is he gone? Yeah,
I think he's done. I'm actually hoping he wins this fight only because there's that sentimental value that I spent some time with Dennis before. We had some good laughs on the West Coast, but I hope he does emerge victorious. It's going to be difficult. I could say the same thing about Bilal Muhammad, but I think Jeff Neal does win that fight. And just to counteract what James said in terms of potential fight of the night, man, I can't believe I'm not picking the Donald Cerrone fight. I can't believe I'm not picking the main event as the fight of the night. I will go with Gregor Gillespie and Yancy Medeiros as the fight of the night. It's going to be crazy.